Hi, welcome back. This is Dr. Lassane again, and today we're going to be taking a look at the syllabus for the class. So I've already logged into LiveBinder. I've already selected my binder for the course. Now I'm going to click on the link for syllabus and notice it's in a Word document. So I'm going to take a look at that Word document, which I've already clicked and opened and put on my desktop. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I do want to point out the information that I think is important. Since we're no longer in a face-to-face environment where I would talk about this in some detail, I thought this screencast might kind of serve as a substitute for it. So this is Children's Literature Class, LSSL 5360. This is my contact information here. My mailing address, which I doubt that you'll need, but it's here nonetheless. The office, the general office phone number for library science, the fax number, the central fax number for library science, and my voicemail. If you need to call me with a question and you don't get me when I'm in my office, you can always leave me a voicemail message. That then is texted to me via email, so I know that there's a voicemail waiting for me and that somebody has a question that I need to get back to them about. You can also email me. These are 2 of my 5 email addresses. This should be sufficient for you getting in touch with me. And my office hours, if you want to try to talk to a real person in real time, are going to be Tuesdays, generally from 8 in the morning till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometimes I'm out for various committee meetings, but for the most part, I'm in my office during those times. The course descriptions and things like that I'm going to leave up to you. Idea objectives come into play at the end of the class when you're evaluating this course. So let me go to what's important. Here are the books for the class. The textbook we're using is by Sylvia Vardell. It's called Children's Literature in Action, A Librarian's Guide. It is written specifically for school librarians. I think there's so much good stuff in here. We have them available in the department for purchase for $30, but you can certainly also order them from the campus bookstore, from a publisher, from an online bookstore. You could share textbooks if you live close by one another. Just make sure you have your textbook as this class begins, because there's all kinds of references to it and you will need to be able to read it once the semester gets underway. If you wish to purchase books from me, you can send a check to that address above and include with that check a mailing address where you want the book sent. In addition to the textbook, we're going to be reading some children's books in common. There are tons of reasons why these are here, and I thought I'd just kind of go through them pretty quickly and talk about why I've selected these particular books. They're arranged alphabetically by author, but in the textbook discussion, the textbook assignment screencast, you'll see the order in which we're going to actually read and discuss these books. But for the sake of bibliography here, it's alpha by author. So the first book on the list is Kathy Ephelt's The Underneath. It is a Newbery Honor book. It was a finalist for the National Book Award. In addition to that, it is a wonderful example of 2 storylines that combine into an interesting kind of third storyline through the book. It's got Native American roots. It's got roots in the Bayou. Kathy is one of our wonderful Texas authors. You're going to be reading Susan Campbell Bartoletti's Hitler Youth, a nonfiction book about how Hitler was able to recruit the youth that he did during his reign. You're going to be reading Nick Bishop's Spiders, or any of the Nick Bishop books on animals. He's got books on snakes and a whole wide variety of different animals. All of them are worthy of taking a look at. Kids absolutely adore them. They're basically picture book nonfiction. We're going to be reading Georgia Bragg's How They Croaked, The Awful Ends of the Awfully Famous. Nonfiction book with a lot of humor actually in it, kind of dark humor, because it is about how famous people died and then what happened to their bodies after they died. I think you'll enjoy the reading. It's done in short vignettes or chapters. We will probably always read Beverly Cleary's Dear Mr. Henshaw, a Newbery winner, and the first book that really dealt with a child of divorce. And notice that the publication date on that is 1983. So kids who grew up before then didn't have images of themselves and their families in books. We'll be reading Christopher Paul Curtis's The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. wonderful piece of historical fiction that has great humor but also great weight to it. It's a Newbery Honor and a Coretta Scott King Honor book too. We'll be reading Carmen Agredides Martina, The Beautiful Cockroach, which is a Cuban folk tale. You can listen to this. There are audio recordings of Carmen Agredides reading both the book and doing a storyteller version of it. I certainly encourage you to do it. She's a wonderful storyteller, and this is a perfect book for a storytelling session. We'll next read The Legend of the Bluebonnet by Tomie dePaula. We read this for several reasons. First of all, we live in Texas, and the bluebonnets will be growing this semester. But more importantly, we read it because it's absolutely a beautiful picture book that captures the ancient story of how the bluebonnet came to be. So far in this list, we have looked at books that are multicultural in different ways. We've looked at The Underneath, which has interesting content about Native Americans. We've looked at Hitler Youth, which really looks at another perspective of World War II and the Nazi occupation. How They Croaked, Dear Mr. Henshaw, The Watsons Go to Birmingham. All of these have multicultural content. So you're going to see that repeated over and over throughout this list. It's important that we have books that represent a large diversity in terms of readership, main characters, authors, etc. Sharon Draper's Out of My Mind is next on this list. It's the story of a girl who is profoundly disabled and what happens when one day she gets a keyboard that allows her to communicate more with other people. It's an incredible book about the human spirit and how the human spirit can triumph. Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book is here not only because it's a Newbery winner, which it is, the Newbery Award in 2009, but because it's his homage to Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. This is his variation. Carmen Lomas Garza wrote Magic Windows. This is a book in English and in Espanol that talks about papel picado, the beautiful paper cuttings that you can see and why they're important to this particular culture. We're looking at a different culture in Nikki Giovanni's Rosa, illustrated by Brian Collier. That was a Coretta Scott King honor book the year that it was published, and this looks at the childhood of Rosa Parks. Shannon Hale's Rapunzel's Revenge is a variation of the fairy tale, the folk tale of Rapunzel, done in graphic novel form. It's important for us to know graphic novels, especially those that are more appropriate for younger readers. Roby Harris's It's So Amazing is a book about sex and sexuality. It's a book that is constantly being challenged and censored and removed from libraries, and we need to take a look at why this content is considered so dangerous for us to know. Another of the graphic novels we'll look at is Baby Mouse, and you can read any book in this series, not just the first one, Queen of the World, but any of them. There are, I think, a dozen now in this particular progression of Baby Mouse. The books are done in black and white and pink, and to me are kind of similar to Ian Falconer's Olivia books. I think you'll enjoy them. We could not teach a children's literature class without reading one of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid books by Jeff Kinney. This Is Not My Hat by John Klassen was a Caldecott Honor book, and it is, I'm sorry, not a Caldecott Honor, it was the Caldecott winner this year. Klassen won 2 Caldecotts this year for 2 different books. This Is Not My Hat kind of picks up with a book that he had written the year before that also won a Caldecott nod, and it's a picture book with very few words, lots of illustration that tells an incredibly funny story. Another of the graphic novels we're reading, Jarek Krzyzewska's Lunch Lady. And again, you can read any of the books in this series. I believe that there are 9 or 10 books so far. Any of them will do. Derek Landry's Skullduggery Pleasant is a wonderful mystery fantasy book about a private detective who just happens to be a skeleton. Cynthia Lord's Rules is a Newbery winner from several years ago, and it looks at what it's like to be the normal quote-unquote child in a household that has a special needs kid. It's a really interesting way to look at different perspectives. Kader Nelson's We Are the Ship A beautiful book of illustrations, but stories as well, that talk about how Africans came to the United States and how they basically established themselves and set about living here. It looks at some incredibly important figures in African American history. Catherine Patterson's Bridge to Terabithia will always be on my list. It's a Newbery winner, and it's one that I think gets better with each successive reading. Laura Amy Schlitz won a Newbery Award for Good Masters, Sweet Ladies, basically a novel in verse set during medieval times. Brian Selznick's Caldecott winning The Invention of Hugo Cabret breaks all the rules when it comes to picture books. Maurice Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are probably establishes those rules for picture books. It's probably the most recognized and most important picture book that we can look at. Mirror, Mirror by Marilyn Singer is an interesting way of looking at poetry from a different perspective. Lane Smith's It's a Book is basically a 32-page joke. It's 31 pages leading up to the joke at the end. There's a fabulous book trailer for it. You might want to go out and look for it. Melissa Sweet's Balloons Over Broadway, the true story of the puppeteer of the Macy's Parade, looks at how we got those big balloons every Thanksgiving Day and how they originally started, who was the person behind it. We'll read David Wiesner's Caldecott winning The Three Pigs, an interesting variation of that folktale. And finally, we'll look at Mo Willems' A Big Guy Took My Ball, an easy reader, a Geisel Award winner for 2013. I hope that you enjoy all of these books, but there's so much more, of course, here in the syllabus besides that. I'm going to flip through some of these pretty quickly. These are for you to read. They basically give you the pedagogical background for what it is that we're doing. Here's what's important right here. Here are the various assignments you'll be doing for class. Here's what they're worth in terms of point value. In other words, this is the section that tells you how you get your A in class. And then we go through a bunch of policies. I really ask you to take particular attention to the late work policy because I don't accept late work, and you need to kind of be advised of that at the very beginning of class. Here's the rest of how you get your A. The total points for the course are 300. In order to get an A, you get 90% of those. That would be 270. To get a B, you get 240 or more points. And if you score below that, basically you're going to be looking at an F. The grades for my class tend to be A's and B's. Generally, F's are people who did not do assignments, did not turn them in on time, or did not do them at all. The way to pass the class is to make an honest effort to do the various assignments for the course. If you do that, you'll be successful, I promise you. Finally, the end of this particular syllabus is a list of incredible books about children's literature. It's just to show you that there are pedagogical bases for all the things that we're going to do in class. So that's kind of a brief and overview of the syllabus. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, to leave me a message at the office, to contact me so I can answer them for you. I want you to be successful in this class. Thanks. See you soon.